The vintage dictaphone was gone. It held the only recordings of my late husband's voice, and now the table was bare. Mark stood there, claiming I'd forgotten selling it, his eyes filled with a greedy desperation. He needs my money to drown his crypto debts, and he's decided I'm the sacrificial lamb. When I tried to call for help, the caseworker blocked my path. The trap has snapped shut, they've made me a ward of the state. But they forgot one thing, I am an archivist of secrets. Listen to the end to hear how I handled it, and subscribe to hear more of my journey. I woke to absence. Not the gentle kind, the slow fade of memory or the natural erosion of time, but the surgical, violent kind. The kind that leaves a scar on the air itself. My mahogany secretary desk was gone. I sat up in bed, the sheets cold against my legs, and stared at the rectangular ghost where it had stood for 40 years. The morning light slanted through the bay window, illuminating nothing but pale carpet and a faint impression in the pile where the desk's claw feet had gripped the floor. Dust motes tumbled through the void, glittering like ash from a cremation. My pulse began to hammer in my swollen knuckles, a dull, rhythmic ache that radiated up through my wrists. I pressed my fingertips together, feeling the heat of inflammation, the stiffness that had become my constant companion. The rheumatoid arthritis flared when I was stressed, and right now my hands felt like they were wrapped in barbed wire. I didn't move. I didn't call out. I simply stared. That desk wasn't just furniture. It was the structural integrity of my life. 18 drawers of correspondence, catalogued chronologically. The inkwell my husband had given me on our 10th anniversary. The hidden compartment where I kept the original Wilson family trust documents, the ones with the no contest clause that Mark had always pretended not to understand. Someone had reached into my sanctuary while I slept and surgically removed a piece of my soul, leaving only a shadow on the floorboards. The air felt thinner. Robbed of wax and history and the faint, woody smell of mahogany that had soaked into the carpet over decades. I inhaled slowly, forcing myself to count to 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4. Archival breathing. The same technique I'd used when handling a water-damaged medieval manuscript. Steady hands, steady mind. But my hands weren't steady. They were trembling. And it wasn't just the arthritis. I heard the click of Italian leather on hardwood before I saw him. Mark rounded the corner from the hallway, his silk tie knotted in a perfect Windsor, his charcoal suit tailored to hide the paunch he'd developed over the last year. Behind him, a woman in a matching charcoal suit, severe bob, clipboard, the kind of neutral expression that screamed, government employee. "Morning, Mom," Mark said, his voice pitched in that condescending register he reserved for the elderly and the dying. It was oily. That was the only word for it. Like his words had been dipped in something slick and faintly rancid. I opened my mouth to speak, but he was already stepping into the void where my desk had been. His expensive loafers tread on the exact spot where the front left leg had rested, as if the desk had never existed at all. "You sold it, Mom," he continued, his face a practiced mask of concern. "2 weeks ago. To that dealer in Georgetown, remember? You said you needed the space." The woman with the clipboard, Sarah, I assumed, based on the APS badge clipped to her belt, scribbled something without looking up. Her eyes, when they finally flicked to mine, were the eyes of a hawk tracking a limping rabbit. My voice caught. I forced it steady. "I did no such thing." Mark sighed. It was a long, theatrical sigh, the kind that said, "Here we go again. Mom, we talked about this. You called the dealer yourself. You even negotiated the price." "That's a lie. Grace." He crouched down, bringing himself to my eye level where I sat on the edge of the bed. His cologne, wood smoke and something expensive, made my eyes water. "You've been forgetting things. It's okay. That's why Sarah's here. We're going to make sure you're safe." Safe. The word hung in the air like a noose. The room tilted. Not physically, I wasn't dizzy, but the axis of reality had shifted, just slightly, and I needed to recalibrate. I gripped the edge of the mattress with both hands, feeling the cool press of the oak floorboards through my leather slippers. Grounding. A technique I'd learned during my first year at the Library of Congress, when I'd been tasked with cataloging a collection that had survived a fire. Focus on the physical. Anchor yourself in the sensory world. I smelled Mark's cologne again, wood smoke, yes, but underneath it, something sharper. Bourbon. He'd been drinking this morning. Sarah's hairspray, metallic, sterile, the kind that came in a can marked, industrial strength. The faint, lingering scent of floor wax from the hallway, a smell I'd woken to for 30 years. I wasn't losing my mind. I was being hunted. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird in a cage, but I kept my expression neutral. Scholarly detachment. The face I'd worn when a patron had tried to argue that the Gutenberg Bible in our collection was overrated. Polite. Immovable. I am an archivist. I deal in primary sources. And the primary source of my memory, crystal clear, unimpeachable, said that desk was in this room at midnight. I had touched it before bed. Run my fingertips along the brass pulls of the top drawer. I'd been organizing my late husband's letters, sorting them by year. The tactile memory was absolute. Mark, I said quietly, I did not sell that desk. He exchanged a glance with Sarah. It was brief. Practiced. The kind of glance that said, see? I told you. My eyes flicked to the side table beside the wingback chair. The vintage dictaphone was gone. For a moment, I forgot to breathe. The dictaphone had always sat precisely 3 inches from the lamp base. My late husband's silver-plated recording device, a relic from his days as a journalist. I'd used it for the last 5 years to record oral histories, interviews with retired librarians, archivists, conservators. My voice, clear and steady, narrating the techniques I'd perfected over 4 decades. It was proof. Proof that my mind was still a steel trap. Proof that I could still organize, analyze, synthesize. And now it was gone. This wasn't a memory lapse. This was a systematic liquidation. Mark needed my trust. $5 million, held in an ironclad structure my husband had set up to protect me from exactly this kind of predation. But the trust had a weakness. If I were declared incompetent, Mark, as my only living heir, would gain control as successor trustee. He hadn't just stolen a tool. He'd stolen my voice. Where's the dictaphone? I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. Mark frowned, glancing at the side table. What dictaphone? The silver one. My husband's. It was right there. He shook his head slowly, the way you'd shake your head at a child insisting they'd seen a monster under the bed. Mom, you gave that to the Smithsonian last year. For their oral history archive. Don't you remember? You were so proud. I stared at him. He was good. I'd give him that. The lie was smooth, plausible, even generous sounding. She donated it to a museum. It painted me as charitable, not senile. But I had never donated that dictaphone. I would have sooner donated my own teeth. I need to call my attorney, I said. My voice was steady despite the tremor in my hands. I pushed myself up from the bed, my knees protesting, and turned toward the sideboard in the hallway where the landline sat in its cradle. Sarah moved with practiced, predatory speed. Her hand, firm, dry, the nails trimmed short, clamped onto my forearm before I'd taken 2 steps. The pressure was just shy of painful. A warning dressed up as assistance. We're just here to help, Grace, she said, her tone flat as a dial tone. Let's sit down first. Let's talk. It wasn't a request. I looked down at her hand on my arm. Her grip was professional. Calculated. The kind of grip that left no bruises but communicated absolute control. I don't need to sit, I said quietly. I need to make a phone call. Grace. Mark stepped closer, filling my peripheral vision. You're upset. Let's not make any hasty decisions. Hasty? I turned to face him, and for a moment, I let the mask slip. Let him see the rage coiling in my chest like a fist of barbed wire. Someone has stolen my property. That is not a hasty concern. Mom. His voice dropped an octave. Softer. More dangerous. No one has stolen anything. You're confused. That's why we're here. Sarah's grip tightened, just a fraction. I was being physically managed in my own hallway. The power dynamic had shifted with the finality of a closing vault. I was no longer the homeowner. I was the problem. Sarah guided me, firmly, inexorably, to the dining room table. She pulled out a chair, and I sat, because the alternative was to be forced into it. Mark remained standing, his arms crossed, his expression a careful blend of sorrow and resolve. Sarah slid a blueback document across the polished wood. The sound of paper on mahogany made my teeth ache. This is a temporary ex parte guardianship petition, she said, her tone as flat as before. No warmth. No apology. Given the recent lapses in judgment, the unauthorized sale of assets, the confusion about the dictaphone, and the report filed by your son regarding concerns about your safety, the court has granted Mark emergency oversight. I stared at the document. It was dense. Legal boilerplate. But my eyes caught the key phrases: incompetent to manage her affairs, poses a risk to herself, temporary guardian appointed pending full evaluation. My hands, resting on the table, began to shake. Not from fear. From rage. I have not had lapses in judgment, I said, biting off each word. I have had my property stolen. Grace. Mark's voice again, dripping with false patience. The court disagrees. I looked up at him. Really looked. And I saw it, the faint shine of sweat on his upper lip. The tension in his jaw. The way his fingers drummed against his forearm, once, twice, a nervous tic he'd had since childhood. He was afraid. Not of me. Of time. Of the money running out before he could get his hands on the trust. I want to see a judge, I said. You will, Sarah replied. In 2 weeks. At the competency hearing. Until then, Mark has been granted authority to manage your medical care, your finances, and your living arrangements. I am no longer a person. I am a ward. In 30 seconds, they have stripped away the sovereignty I spent 68 years building. I am a rare manuscript that has just been reclassified as damaged goods, awaiting a conservator who wants to burn me for the insurance. Mark reached into the inner pocket of his suit jacket and produced a small plastic cup. Inside it, a single pill, vivid blue, the color of antifreeze. You're agitated, Mom, he said, setting the cup on the table in front of me. The doctor called this in to help with the anxiety episodes. I stared at the pill. I knew my prescriptions. I had them memorized, catalogued with the same precision I'd used for the library's rare book collection. There was no blue pill in my regimen. What is it? I asked. A mild sedative. Just to take the edge off. I don't want it. Mark leaned in, close enough that I could smell the bourbon beneath his cologne. Sharp. Sour. The smell of desperation. Take it, he said quietly, or we'll have to call the transport team. You don't want to go to the psych ward in a bathrobe, do you? The threat was implicit but clear. Comply, or be forcibly removed. Sarah's expression didn't change. She simply watched, pen poised above her clipboard, ready to document my resistance. I looked at the pill again. It sat in the cup like a tiny, poisonous jewel. Chemical handcuffs. If I took it, I'd be sluggish, compliant, easier to control during the evaluation. If I refused, they'd use my refusal as evidence of incompetence. She doesn't understand her own medical needs. Checkmate. Or so they thought. I reached for the cup with a hand I allowed to shake violently. My fingers trembled as I picked it up, the plastic rattling against my swollen knuckles. I made a show of struggling to grip it, fumbling it once, catching it just before it fell. Mark exhaled, relief, pure and simple. I brought the cup to my lips, tipped my head back, and tossed the pill into my mouth. But as my tongue made contact with the bitter surface, I tucked it expertly to the side, pressing it into the pocket between my gum and cheek. A trick I'd learned from a conservator who'd worked with poisonous pigments: never let the substance touch the soft tissue under the tongue. I swallowed the water with a loud, theatrical gulp, then opened my mouth wide, lifting my tongue for Mark to see. "Good," he said, nodding. "That's good, Mom." I let my eyelids flutter. Let my chin dip toward my chest. Within minutes, I allowed my breathing to slow, my shoulders to slump. I played the part of the medicated elder. A broken relic yielding to chemistry. Mark sighed, a sound of pure, disgusting relief, and signaled Sarah with a tilt of his head. "She'll be out for a few hours," he murmured. "Let's get Gable in here to set up." They turned away, already discussing logistics, their voices fading as they moved toward the front door. They thought the hardware was shutting down. They didn't realize the processor was just running a background script. The pill sat in my cheek, dissolving slowly, bitter and acrid. I'd spit it out the moment I was alone. The doorbell chimed. I heard Mark's footsteps in the hall, the creak of the hinge as the front door swung open. A woman's voice, bright, saccharine, floated into the house. "You must be Mark. Oh, what a lovely home." I cracked one eye open, just enough to see through my lashes. The woman who entered was built like a tank and dressed like a church nursery volunteer. Floral tunic. Elastic waist khaki pants. White orthopedic sneakers. Her hair was dyed an aggressive shade of auburn, teased into a helmet that defied both gravity and good taste. This was Mrs. Gable. She didn't introduce herself to me. Didn't even glance in my direction. She simply produced a heavy ring of keys from her oversized purse and began swapping the deadbolt on the front door for a smart lock. I watched her through the reflection in the mahogany mirror hanging in the hallway, the one piece of furniture they hadn't sold yet. She worked quickly, efficiently, the drill whirring as she sank screws into the doorframe. The sound was obscene. Violent. The sound of my prison bars being welded shut. "Code 7-4-1-9, Mark said, leaning against the wall, arms crossed. "Don't give it to her." Mrs. Gable laughed, a sharp, nasal sound. "Oh, honey, I've done this before. She won't even know I'm here." Liar. I knew exactly what she was. A vulture in a floral tunic. Sent to watch me rot. When she finished with the lock, she moved to the kitchen. I heard the clink of glass, the hiss of a kettle being filled. She was making herself at home. Mark and Sarah lingered by the door, speaking in low voices. I caught fragments: "Evaluation on the 18th, Dr. Brennan's already on board, just keep her calm." Then the door clicked shut. And I was alone with Mrs. Gable. I waited until I heard her footsteps retreat to the kitchen, the creak of the floorboard by the refrigerator, the rattle of teacups, and then I slipped the blue pill from my cheek and wrapped it in a tissue. Evidence. I tucked it into the pocket of my robe and forced myself to stand. My knees protested, stiff from sitting, but I moved slowly toward my bedroom, keeping my steps shuffling and uncertain. Once inside, I closed the door and leaned against it, my heart pounding. I needed to think. To assess. To inventory. I had my bone folders, delicate, precise tools for lifting pages without tearing them. I had my archival scalpels, hidden in the wooden box under my bed. I had adhesives, solvents, magnifying loupes. The tools of my trade. But more importantly, I had knowledge. I knew this house. Every creak. Every vent. Every hidden space. The Wilson estate had been built in 1887, back when houses were designed with servant corridors and speaking tubes. The ventilation system ran through the walls like veins, connecting room to room. If you knew where to listen, you could hear conversations 2 floors away. Mark had forgotten that. He'd grown up here, but he'd never paid attention. He'd never needed to. I, on the other hand, had spent decades preserving things. Listening. Observing. Most importantly, I had their arrogance. Mark thought my rheumatoid arthritis was a cognitive disability. He saw my swollen knuckles and assumed my brain was equally inflamed. He had forgotten that an archivist's greatest skill isn't strength. It's the ability to find the one loose thread that unravels the entire tapestry. I crossed to the window and pulled the curtain back, just an inch. Below, a generic white moving van was pulling out of the driveway. My secretary desk was in there. I knew it. Strapped down, wrapped in blankets, being carted off to some dealer in Georgetown who'd flip it for triple what Mark claimed I'd sold it for. Rage, cold and crystalline, replaced the fear. They were treating my life like a clearance sale. My possessions. My autonomy. Myself. I traced the line of my jaw in the window's reflection. My face looked older than it had yesterday. Thinner. The skin stretched tight over the bones. But my eyes were sharp. Clear. Uncompromising. I am Grace Wilson. I have preserved the crumbling charters of this nation. I have held documents that predate the Constitution itself, coaxed them back from the edge of dissolution with nothing but patience, precision, and an unwavering respect for what they represented. I will certainly preserve myself. They wanted to turn me into a ghost? Fine. I would be the ghost that haunts every legal filing they possess. I turned away from the window and let my shoulders slump. I loosened my posture, let my spine curve, allowed my head to droop forward. I shuffled toward the bedroom door and opened it slowly, as if the effort required tremendous concentration. Mrs. Gable was in the hallway, holding a tray. On it, a teacup, steam rising in delicate curls. "Oh, Grace," she chirped, her voice syrupy. "I made you some Earl Grey. Your favorite, right?" I blinked at her, letting my expression go vague. Pleasant. Empty. "Where's the bathroom?" I asked. She blinked back, momentarily thrown. "Grace, honey, you've lived here for 30 years. Oh. I let my face crumple slightly, as if embarrassed. Yes. Of course. I forgot. The smile that spread across her face was venomous. She'd bought it. Down the hall, dear. Second door on the left. I nodded, shuffling past her, and heard her mutter under her breath, "Jesus, Mark wasn't kidding." I let a vacant, pleasant smile drift across my face as I moved. Let them believe the sedative had taken hold. Let them believe the expired hardware is finally offline. Tomorrow, the restoration begins. Tonight, I start recording the rot. Mrs. Gable brings my afternoon Earl Grey in the Royal Doulton cup. It's a detail that would be touching if it weren't so obscene. The Doulton is my favorite, bone china, delicate as a whisper, hand-painted with forget-me-nots. My husband gave it to me on our 20th anniversary. The fact that she's using it now, for this, feels like desecration. She sets the cup on the side table with exaggerated care, as if I might shatter at the sound. "There we go, Grace," she coos. "Nice and hot, just how you like it." I reach for it with trembling hands. No performance required, the rheumatoid flares are real today, and bring it to my lips. The bergamot hits first. Familiar. Comforting. Then, underneath, a sharp, metallic tang that coats my tongue like old pennies. Copper. Not the natural mineral content of tap water. This is chemical. Intentional. A liquid sedative, likely a benzodiazepine derivative dissolved into the tea. I'd catalogued a collection of Victorian pharmacopoeia once. I knew the signature taste of dissolved tranquilizers. My tongue feels thick almost immediately, a warning sign of the chemical veil they're trying to drape over my cognitive functions. I don't spit it out. That would give me away. Instead, I hold the tepid liquid in my mouth, tucking it into the pockets of my cheeks, and fake a swallow. My throat bobs. My eyes flutter closed, as if savoring the warmth. Mrs. Gable leans against the doorframe, watching. They aren't just managing me. They are dissolving me from the inside out. I sit at the kitchen table, head bowed as if in a stupor. The tea sits heavy in my mouth, bitter and faintly astringent. I need to get rid of it, but Gable is still in the room, moving through the kitchen with the casual confidence of someone who owns the space. I use the chrome surface of the toaster as my peripheral eye. The reflection is distorted, warped, but clear enough. She's leaning against the counter now, arms crossed over her floral tunic. Her gaze is fixed on me. Not on my face. On my throat. She's watching to make sure I've processed the dose. I let my head droop lower, my chin nearly touching my chest. I make my breathing slow and deep, the rhythm of someone slipping under. My hands rest on the table, fingers curled inward, the picture of geriatric surrender. In the black glass of the microwave, I see her smirk. It's a jagged thing. Sharp-edged. The look of a person who enjoys the quiet power of being a predator. She's done this before. I can tell. The way she moves, the way she watches, it's not the nervous efficiency of a new hire. It's the calm of someone who has perfected a routine. I remain motionless. A wax figure. A relic. Finally, she turns away, pulling her phone from her pocket. She taps at the screen, her back to me, and I hear the faint chime of a text message sending. The moment her attention shifts, I lean forward as if reaching for the teacup, and let the liquid dribble from my mouth into a cloth napkin I've pressed to my lips. The napkin absorbs it, a spreading stain of amber and copper. I fold it carefully, slowly, and tuck it into the pocket of my cardigan. Evidence. During Gable's bathroom break, I hear the click of the door, the hiss of the faucet. I shuffle into the library. My library. The room that used to smell like leather and old paper and the faint vanilla sweetness of lignin decay. Now it smells like Mrs. Gable's citrus air freshener, a chemical assault that makes my eyes water. On the desk, my desk, the Walnut Partners desk my husband and I used to sit at together, sorting through estate documents, lies a single sheet of paper. A deed of gift. I lean closer, gripping the edge of the desk to steady myself. The document purports to transfer ownership of my Shakespeare First Folio facsimile, a museum-quality reproduction worth $12,000, to the Friends of the Alexandria Public Library. It's dated 2 days ago. The signature at the bottom is a grotesque parody of my own. A shaky, spidery scrawl that looks like the hand of a woman in the throes of dementia. The G in Grace collapses in on itself. The W in Wilson trails off into nothing. It's a forgery. A clumsy one. Mark is pre-authorizing the theft. Creating a paper trail of my supposed decline. I lift the document carefully, tilting it under the light. The ink is still fresh, the the blue pigment sitting on top of the paper fibers instead of absorbed into them. He used a cheap ballpoint. The pressure of the strokes is uneven, hesitant, as if whoever forged it had been trying to mimic weakness. A professional archivist would never leave such an obvious trail. But then, Mark isn't a professional. He's an amateur playing at institutional fraud. I set the document down exactly where I found it, my hands shaking, not from arthritis this time, but from rage so pure it feels like ice in my veins. The library door opens behind me. I don't turn. I already know who it is. I can smell the bourbon. Mark's footsteps are heavy on the hardwood. He closes the distance quickly, and suddenly he's there, looming over me, his hands slamming down on the desk beside the forged deed of gift. "Find something interesting, Mom?" His voice is different now. No oily concern. No condescending warmth. Just cold, flat menace. I straighten slowly, meeting his eyes. "You forged my signature." "No." He leans down, his face inches from mine. His breath is sharp with alcohol and something sour, stress, maybe, or the rot of desperation. "You signed it. You just don't remember." "I remember everything." His jaw tightens. For a moment, I see the boy he used to be, the one who couldn't lie to save his life, whose ears would turn red when he was caught sneaking cookies. But that boy is gone. "Stop being difficult, Grace," he hisses, his voice low and predatory. "If you keep fighting the medicine, the doctor says we'll have to double the dosage. You'll be a vegetable before the hearing. Is that what you want?" The threat is explicit now. Not veiled. Not dressed up in concern. "You're willing to destroy me," I say quietly. "Your own mother." He doesn't flinch. "You're already destroyed. You just don't know it yet." His eyes are cold. Devoid of the boy I raised. Devoid of anything human. I see it then, with perfect clarity. He's already decided I'm dead. He's just waiting for my body to catch up. I retreat to my bedroom, moving slowly, letting my gait be a shuffle. Mrs. Gable watches me from the hallway, her arms crossed, her expression smug. She doesn't follow. She doesn't need to. The smart lock on the front door ensures I'm not going anywhere. I close the bedroom door and lean against it, my heart pounding. My hands are shaking violently now, a real flare, triggered by the stress and the confrontation. The joints in my fingers feel like broken glass grinding together. I cross to the dresser and pull open the bottom drawer. Beneath a stack of wool sweaters, hidden in a velvet-lined case, is my restoration kit. I lift it out carefully, setting it on the bed. Inside, bone folders, archival scalpels, pH testing strips, and a small collection of amber glass vials. The vials are the kind I use for testing pH levels in vellum and parchment, small, airtight, and designed to protect light-sensitive chemicals. I pull one from the case and hold it up to the light. Then I retrieve the napkin from my cardigan pocket and carefully wring the remaining liquid into the vial. The copper-tainted tea drips slowly, pooling at the bottom. I seal the vial with a rubber stopper and label it in my shaky handwriting, October 14th, 3 p.m., Earl Grey. This isn't just waste. This is Exhibit A. I hide the vial inside the hollowed-out base of a Victorian-era book press, a heavy iron contraption I keep on the shelf, disguised as decor. No one would think to look inside it. Each drop of tainted tea is a brick in the wall I'm building against him. The doorbell rings the next morning. I hear Mrs. Gable's chirping voice in the foyer, then heavier footsteps. Mail. Unfamiliar. I shuffle to the doorway of my bedroom and peer out. A man in a cheap, polyester suit is standing in the library. His tie is crooked. His shoes are scuffed. He's holding a digital recorder in one hand and a clipboard in the other. Mark introduces him as an appraiser. The word makes my stomach turn. The man doesn't look at me. Doesn't acknowledge my presence. He simply begins moving through the room, dragging his greasy fingers across the spines of my collection. My 17th century collection. Books I've spent decades acquiring, restoring, preserving. He pulls a calfskin-bound volume from the shelf, a 1623 Geneva Bible, one of only 40 known copies in private hands, and flips it open carelessly. The pages crackle under his rough handling. "This one's got foxing," he mutters into the recorder, his tone dismissive. He tosses the book onto the desk like a piece of meat. "Maybe $200. 200. The Bible is worth $15,000. I grip the doorframe, my nails digging into the wood. The disrespect is a physical blow. But I absorb it. I let him see a failing woman standing in the doorway, mouth slightly open, eyes vague. Not the woman who knows the exact auction value of every page in this room. Not the woman who has forgotten more about book preservation than this man will ever learn. Mark watches me from across the room. Waiting. Testing. I don't give him the satisfaction of a reaction. The appraiser leaves 20 minutes later, his recorder full of lowball valuations. I remain in the library, standing in the center of the room, surrounded by the wreckage of my life's work. The smell of old vellum and beeswax rises around me, the library's natural perfume, undiminished by Mrs. Gable's chemical assault. It acts like smelling salts. I close my eyes and breathe deeply, letting the scent fill my lungs. The bergamot and copper fade from my senses, replaced by something older. Cleaner. This is the smell of 40 years of patient labor. The smell of preservation. I focus on the tactile memory of binding leather, the resistance of the thread as it's pulled through punched holes, the give of the adhesive as it dries, the delicate balance of tension required to keep the spine straight. These are my anchors. My grounding points. The chemical fog Mark is trying to induce, the sedatives, the gaslighting, the manufactured confusion, begins to clear. My mind is a high-security archive. He can vandalize the exterior, spray paint the walls, smash the windows. But he hasn't breached the vault yet. I am the lead conservator here. And I know how to stop decay. The doorbell rings again the next afternoon. A delivery driver. UPS. I can see the brown uniform through the window. Mrs. Gable is in the kitchen, her back to me, washing dishes with the kind of loud, performative efficiency that says she's not really paying attention. I have a note prepared. I wrote it this morning, in the shaky hand they expect from me, on a scrap of paper torn from a grocery list. The words are simple, desperate. Help. Held against my will. Call the police. I folded it carefully and hid it in the palm of my left hand. As the driver approaches the door, I shuffle forward, reaching for the package he's holding. "I'll take that," I say, my voice thin and quavering. Mrs. Gable's head snaps around. She moves like a viper. Her hand shoots out, intercepting both the package and my wrist in one swift motion. Her grip is iron. Painful. The bones in my wrist grind together. She pries the note from my stiff fingers with a chilling, silent smile. The driver, oblivious, is already turning away. His truck is idling in the driveway. Mrs. Gable holds the note up between us, her eyes locked on mine. Then, slowly, deliberately, she tears it into confetti. The pieces flutter to the floor like snow. She doesn't say a word. She doesn't need to. The message is clear: you are alone. The isolation is now absolute. At 2 a.m., I lie in bed, listening. Mrs. Gable's snoring drifts through the wall, a heavy, rhythmic sound, punctuated by the occasional snort. She's in the guest room, the one closest to mine, positioned to intercept any attempt at escape. But she's asleep. I slip out of bed, moving with the silence of someone who has spent a lifetime in libraries. I know which floorboards creak. I know where to step. I bypass the loose board near the stairs, the one that groans like a wounded animal, and descend into the basement. The air changes immediately. Cooler. Drier. The smell of isopropyl alcohol and ancient dust. My archival restoration lab. I flip the surgical lamp on its lowest setting, casting a pool of cold, white light over the workbench. My tools are here. Untouched. Forgotten. The bone folders, lined up like surgical instruments. The scalpels, their blades sharp enough to split a sheet of paper lengthwise. The pH pens, the magnifying loops, the archival glue. In this room, I am not a ward. I am a scientist. The basement is the one place they haven't modernized yet. The one place that still belongs entirely to me. As I stand at the workbench, cataloging my tools, I hear a muffled vibration above me. I freeze. It's not footsteps. It's voices. I look up at the ventilation shaft. It's a wide, rectangular duct running along the ceiling, part of the original Victorian heating system. The house was built in 1887, back when forced air systems relied on gravity and convection. The duct runs directly from the library above to the basement below. I move closer, standing directly beneath the vent. Mark's voice drifts down, clear and sharp, as if he were standing right beside me. Needs to look completely out of it. If the judge sees her too sharp, the petition fails. It's a natural megaphone. An acoustic line straight into the heart of the house. I realize, with a sudden, crystalline clarity, that I don't need a high-tech surveillance device. I don't need to plant bugs or hack phones. The house itself is providing the testimony I need. I stand in the dark, barely breathing, and listen. Mark's voice continues, smooth and businesslike. Gable, make sure she's properly leveled for the Friday hearing. The judge needs to see her unable to follow a simple sentence. If she looks too sharp, my petition for full guardianship will fail. There's a pause. Then Mrs. Gable's voice, dry, amused, utterly devoid of empathy. Don't worry, sweetheart. By Friday, she won't know her own name. Her laugh is a rattling sound, like stones shaken in a tin can. Good, Mark says. The doctor's already signed off on the cognitive assessment. I just need the visual to match the paperwork. What about the trust? The moment the judge grants full guardianship, I trigger the succession clause. She becomes incompetent, I become successor trustee, and the $5 million transfers into a managed account. After that, it's just a matter of time. And when she passes? Then I inherit free and clear. I stand in the dark, my heart cold. They aren't just stealing my money. They are planning a chemical lobotomy. A slow erasure. They will drug me into oblivion, warehouse me in some sterile facility, and wait for my body to give out. I have heard my own death sentence, delivered in the calm, procedural tone of a man discussing stock options. I turn to leave, to retreat back upstairs before they realize I'm gone, and nearly trip over something on the basement stairs. Mark's leather briefcase. He must have left it there when he came down earlier to check the fuse box. The basement light had been flickering. He'd muttered something about the wiring and disappeared for 10 minutes. I stare at the briefcase. It's expensive. Italian leather. Monogrammed. And it's unlocked. I kneel, ignoring the sharp protest of my knees, and open it with the precision of a surgeon. Inside, financial spreadsheets, printed emails, a photocopy of the Wilson Family Trust. And, tucked between two folders, the silver-plated dictaphone. My husband's dictaphone. I lift it out, feeling its familiar weight. The metal is cool against my palm, solid and real. He didn't destroy it. He kept it. Likely to listen for any other secrets I might have recorded. To mine my oral histories for ammunition. But he made a mistake. He left a weapon in the cage. I palmed the device, slipping it into the pocket of my robe, and carefully closed the briefcase. I arrange everything exactly as I found it, the papers aligned, the folders positioned just so. Then I rise, moving silently back up the stairs. The hunter has given the prey a blade. And the prey knows exactly how to use it. Back in the cool, subterranean silence of the lab, I cradle the silver dictaphone in my palm. The weight of it is comforting. Familiar. My late husband used to carry it in his breast pocket, the metal warming against his chest. I can almost hear his voice, "Grace, you can't fix what you can't document." My rheumatoid knuckles throb, a deep, grinding ache that radiates up through my wrists, but my fingers remember the dance. I set the dictaphone on the workbench under the surgical lamp and pull a fine-tipped archival brush from my kit. The kind I used to use for cleaning illuminated manuscripts, for lifting centuries of accumulated dust without damaging the gold leaf underneath. I work slowly, methodically, clearing debris from the internal gears. Mark has been careless. There are fingerprint smudges on the casing, lint caught in the speaker grill, a faint residue of bourbon on the rewind button. I clean it all. I don't just need it to work. I need it to be invisible. When I'm satisfied, I wrap the casing in acid-free tissue, the kind designed to prevent chemical degradation, to muffle any metallic clinking when it's pressed against the vent. This isn't just a gadget anymore. This is a high-stakes restoration project where the text being preserved is my own survival. I drag the step stool across the concrete floor, positioning it directly beneath the ventilation shaft. The iron grate is at shoulder height, bolted into the wall with screws that have rusted into place over a century. I reach up, my shoulders screaming in protest, and press the dictaphone's microphone against the grate. Above, the floorboards of the library groan under Mark's weight. I click record. The tiny red light blinks once, then holds steady. Mark's voice filters down through the ductwork, stripped of its oily charm. It's thinner up here, slightly distorted by the acoustics, but clear enough. The Cayman account is already set up, he's saying. The moment the judge signs the order, the transfer happens within the hour. 5 million, clean. Another voice, male, unfamiliar. Probably someone on speakerphone. And the mother? Incapacitated. The evaluation report is already drafted. Severe cognitive decline, inability to manage her affairs, poses a danger to herself. It's textbook. What about the trust's no contest clause? Mark laughs. It's a cold, brittle sound. She's not going to contest anything. By the time the hearing's over, she won't even remember her own name. I hold my breath, the cool basement air filling my lungs until they ache. Every word is a nail in his coffin. And the tape is catching every strike. I move to my workbench, my legs unsteady, and pull out the amber vials of tainted tea. There are 4 of them now, collected over the last 3 days. Each one sealed with a rubber stopper, each one containing the copper-laced Earl Grey that Mrs. Gable has been serving me. Using a calligraphy pen and archival ink, permanent, fade-resistant, designed to last centuries, I label each vial with meticulous precision. Tuesday, October 15th, 4 p.m. Earl Grey. Symptoms: slurred speech, peripheral numbness. Wednesday, October 16th, 8 a.m. Earl Grey. Symptoms: cognitive fog, delayed reaction time. Wednesday, October 16th, 3:30 p.m. Earl Grey. Symptoms: visual distortion, loss of motor control. Thursday, October 17th, 9 a.m. Earl Grey. Symptoms: severe drowsiness, disorientation. I am building a forensic timeline. A chain of custody. The kind of documentation that would survive cross-examination. In the eyes of the law, I am a confused old woman. In this lab, I am the lead witness for the prosecution. I store the vials in a small, humidity-controlled archival box, the kind designed to preserve fragile documents in stable conditions, and hide it behind a stack of blank vellum on the bottom shelf. If they find the dictaphone, they won't think to look for the chemical evidence. If they find the chemicals, they won't think to search for the recordings. Redundancy. The first rule of preservation. At dinner, I play the part of the crumbling relic. Mrs. Gable has set the table with my good china, another mockery, and placed a glass of water beside my plate. The meal is bland, overcooked chicken, limp vegetables, mashed potatoes with the texture of paste. Mark sits across from me, scrolling through his phone, barely acknowledging my presence. I lift the water glass with a hand I allow to tremble violently. It's not entirely performance. The arthritis is real, the inflammation worse after the stress of the day. But I exaggerate the shake, let the glass wobble dangerously in my grip. Then I tip it. The water spreads across the table in a wide, glittering arc, soaking into the linen tablecloth, pooling around Mark's plate, dripping into his lap. He jerks back, his phone clattering to the floor. Jesus Christ. He's on his feet, wiping at his sleeve as if the water were acid. God, Mom, look at yourself. I watch the mask slip. The practiced concern evaporates, replaced by pure, unadulterated disgust. His face twists. His lip curls. He sees me as a burden. A stain. Something to be wiped away. I'm sorry, I whisper, my voice trembling. I let my hands flutter uselessly, my expression vacant, my eyes wet with manufactured tears. I didn't mean to. Just, he cuts himself off, shaking his head. Forget it. Gable, get her cleaned up. Mrs. Gable appears with a towel, her touch rough as she dabs at my cardigan. I offer a vacant, trembling apology. Let my shoulders slump. Let my chin drop. This is tactical humiliation. The more he believes I am a burden, the more he will underestimate the threat I pose. The house goes silent just after midnight. Then, suddenly, it explodes into muffled movement. I sit up in bed, my pulse spiking. Through the bedroom door, I hear Mark's frantic pacing in the hallway. His footsteps are heavy, erratic. He's moving fast, opening doors, slamming them shut. Where is it? His voice is a roar, raw and unfiltered. Where the fuck is it? Mrs. Gable's voice, muffled. I don't know what you're talking about. The recorder. The silver one. It was in my briefcase. A pause. Then, are you sure you didn't leave it somewhere else? I'm sure. It was right there, between the trust documents. Someone took it. Mark, honey, who would? She stops. I can almost hear the gears turning in her head. You don't think she can barely walk. She can't even remember where the bathroom is. But his voice wavers. I sit on the edge of my bed, my heart a hammer against my ribs. The ghost has started to haunt him. He thinks I'm drugged and dreaming, incapable of coordinated action. But the loss of his trophy, the proof that he stole it, the implicit admission that he's been monitoring me, has cracked his composure. The hunter is beginning to realize the cage might have a trapdoor. I hear his heavy footfalls approaching the basement stairs. My pulse spikes. I have seconds. I slip out of bed, moving as quickly as my stiff joints will allow, and descend into the lab. The dictaphone is on the workbench where I left it, still wrapped in tissue. No time to hide it properly. I grab a hollowed-out book from the shelf, a 19th-century law ledger I'd prepared years ago as a curiosity project, getting the interior to create a hidden compartment. I'd used it to store antique bookplates. I shoved the dictaphone inside, snapped the cover shut, and slid it onto the bottom shelf of the reference section, spine out, indistinguishable from the dozens of other legal texts. The basement door wrenches open. Mark stands at the top of the stairs, chest heaving, his face flushed and slick with sweat. "What are you doing down here, Grace?" His voice is sharp. Dangerous. I turn slowly, letting my expression go slack. My jaw hangs slightly open. My eyes are unfocused. I blink. "I was looking for my husband's journal." "Your husband's journal?" He descends the stairs, each footfall a threat. "Your husband has been dead for 8 years." "I know that." My voice is small, uncertain. "But I thought maybe I'd left it down here." He scans the room, his eyes darting over the scalpels, the glue, the stacks of vellum and leather scraps. He's looking for the dictaphone. I can see it in the way his gaze lingers on the workbench, the shelves, the archival boxes. But he doesn't find it. He doesn't think to check the books. He doesn't leave. His eyes land on the landline cord I'd tried to repair earlier, a futile attempt to reconnect the phone jack he'd disabled. The cord is still dangling from the wall, the copper wires exposed. His face darkens. "You tried to call someone." "No, Don't lie to me." He crosses the room in 3 strides and rips the cord from the wall. The plaster cracks. Wires snap. He throws the severed cord onto the floor like a dead snake. Then he turns and storms back up the stairs. I think he's leaving. But he returns with a hammer and a fistful of nails. "You want to live in the past," he snarls, positioning a board across the doorframe. The first nail goes in with a sharp, violent thud. "Fine. Stay in the cellar." Thud. 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 Each strike reverberates through the walls, through the floor, through my chest. He's boarding me in. The heavy oak door swings shut, and the rhythmic hammering continues. 4 boards. 8 nails per board. 32 strikes in total. When he's done, the house goes silent. I stand in the center of the lab, staring at the door. I am locked in a tomb of my own archives, the air cooling as the isolation becomes physical. Hours later, I've lost track of time. The upstairs entrance to my bedroom opens. Mrs. Gable enters, moving with cold, mechanical efficiency. She doesn't speak. Doesn't look at me. She simply crosses to the dresser, opens the drawer where I keep my restoration kit, and sweeps the contents into a plastic bin. The scalpels. The bone folders. The pH pens. The vials of adhesive. "Safety precaution," she grunts, snapping the lid shut. "Those are my tools." She ignores me, moving to the nightstand, checking the drawers, confiscating anything remotely useful. A letter opener. A pair of scissors. Even my reading glasses. When she's done, she leaves me with nothing but the clothes on my back and 3 books I'd managed to hide under my pillow earlier. The Shakespeare First Folio facsimile. The Geneva Bible. A leather-bound manual on bookbinding and restoration. She glances at the books, then at me, and shrugs. "Knock yourself out," she says, and leaves. The door locks behind her. They think they've disarmed me. They've forgotten that a librarian's most dangerous weapon is the book itself. Mark stands in the doorway an hour later, silhouetted by the harsh fluorescent light of the hallway. His face is in shadow, but I can see the smile. Thin. Cruel. "The hearing was moved up, Grace. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. The judge is a friend of Sarah's. It's a formality now." My stomach drops. Tomorrow. Not next week. Tomorrow. You'll be evaluated by a court-appointed psychiatrist at 8 a.m. By 9:30, the guardianship will be finalized. By noon, your assets will be transferred into a managed trust under my control. He leans against the doorframe, arms crossed, savoring the moment. Enjoy your last night of independence, he says. By noon tomorrow, you won't even be allowed to choose your own socks. He steps back, and the door begins to swing shut. Mark. The door closes. I hear the snick of the external lock. The clock isn't just ticking. It's a countdown to my erasure. Mrs. Gable returns one final time before bed. She's holding a teacup. The Royal Doulton. The forget-me-nots seem to mock me in the dim light. Drink, she says flatly. I don't want. Her hand clamps around my jaw. Hard. Her nails dig into my cheeks, forcing my mouth open. She tips the cup, and the liquid, hot, bitter, foul, floods my mouth. I choke. Cough. But she doesn't relent until the cup is empty. There, she says, releasing me. Sweet dreams. She leaves. Within minutes, the world begins to tilt. The edges of the room soften into a hazy, gray soup. The walls seem to breathe, expanding and contracting like lungs. My hands feel like they belong to someone else, distant, heavy things that respond to my commands a full second too late. I lie on the floor, the cold wood pressing against my cheek. Stay awake. Stay awake. I repeat the names of the Library of Congress classification system like a mantra, a lifeline. Class A, General Works. Class B, Philosophy. Class C, Auxiliary Sciences of History. The chemical tide is pulling at me, dragging me under. I am fighting it with a mental toothpick. I drag myself toward the 3 books. My vision is doubled. Tripled. The room tilts sickeningly. But I can feel the textures, the grainy calfskin of the Bible, the smooth buckram of the Shakespeare, the stiff cloth of the manual. These aren't just reading material. They are structural components. I remember the anatomy of a book. The hollow spine where the signatures are sewn. The hidden boards beneath the leather covering. The strength of the hinges, the flexibility of the end papers. I have no tools. But I have my teeth. My nails. And the slow, agonizing precision of 40 years of craft. I pull the Shakespeare facsimile into my lap and run my fingers along the spine. The binding is tight, professionally done, but not perfect. There's a weakness near the tail, a place where the glue has begun to separate. I dig my thumbnail into the gap and pull. The spine creaks. Resists. I pull harder, ignoring the pain as my nail bends back, threatening to tear. The leather gives. Beneath it, a hollow space. Just wide enough to fit a small vial. Or a folded document. Or a recorded confession. I am building a cache. A weapon disguised as literature. From downstairs, the faint sound of a cork popping drifts up through the floorboards. I freeze, listening. The clink of glasses. 2. Then a third. Laughter. Mark's voice, loose and celebratory. Mrs. Gable's dry cackle. They're toasting. To my demise. I am alone. Drugged. Incarcerated. My breath is shallow, and the darkness is pulling at my consciousness, a heavy velvet curtain threatening to fall. I look at the Shakespeare facsimile in my lap. The spine is partially separated now, the hollow core visible. Title 18, Section 1341, I whisper to the empty room. My voice is slurred, barely audible. Fraud. Mail and wire fraud. Elder abuse. I have the evidence. The dictaphone, hidden in the law ledger in the basement lab. The vials of poison tea, sealed and labeled with forensic precision. The forged documents. Now I just have to survive the night to present it. I close my eyes, pressing the book against my chest. The world tilts again, and I let the darkness take me. But only for a moment. only long enough to rest. Tomorrow, I will rise. And tomorrow, they will learn what it means to underestimate an archivist. The chemical fog from the double dose claws at my mind like a living thing. My thoughts are sluggish, disconnected. I can feel the sedatives dragging me down, pulling me toward unconsciousness with the slow, inexorable weight of a riptide. But I bite my lip until I taste blood. The sharp, metallic tang is a tether to reality. Pain as an anchor. A technique I'd learned from a colleague who'd worked with arsenic-laced pigments in medieval manuscripts. Keep yourself grounded in the physical world, no matter what the chemicals are doing to your mind. I push myself up from the floor, my vision swimming, and reach for the Geneva Bible. The bookmark, a strip of silk ribbon, stiffened with age, slides free. I fold it lengthwise, creating a sharp edge, and use it like a scalpel to pick at the inner hinge of the binding. My hands are swollen, the knuckles hot and inflamed, but the muscle memory of 40 years guides me. I am not a ward. I am a surgeon of the page. I peel back the leather spine carefully, feeling for the weak points in the glue. The adhesive is old, brittle. It gives with a soft crack. Beneath the leather, a hidden pocket. A space between the board and the text block, just wide enough. Every tear of the paper is a quiet declaration of war. I reach under the loose floorboard near the bed, the one that's been squeaking since 1987, the one Mark never bothered to fix, and retrieve the items I hid there earlier. The dictaphone, wrapped in tissue. The amber vials of poison tea, nestled in their archival box. My movements are slow. Underwater. But deliberate. I nestle the silver recorder into the hollowed spine of the Shakespeare facsimile first. It fits perfectly, the weight distributed along the length of the binding. I test the balance. It doesn't tip, doesn't feel unnatural in the hand. The vials go into the restoration manual. 4 of them, arranged in a row within the hollow cavity I've carved. But they rattle. Even the slightest movement produces a faint clink of glass against glass. I pause, my drug-addled mind searching for a solution. Then I look down at my silk nightgown. I tear a strip from the hem, the fabric ripping with a soft hiss. Then another. And another. I wrap each vial in silk, padding the gaps, creating a cushion that absorbs sound and prevents movement. These books are no longer vessels for literature. They are forensic evidence lockers, disguised as the hobbies of a senile woman. From the hem of my robe, the inner seam, where I'd hidden it days ago in a moment of paranoid foresight, I retrieve a tiny, dried smear of archival methylcellulose. Glue. Professional-grade adhesive, designed to be reversible, pH-neutral, and strong enough to hold manuscripts together for centuries. I'd palmed it from my restoration kit before Mrs. Gable confiscated everything. It's dried to a hard, brittle film, but I rehydrate it with a drop of my own saliva. The chemical reaction is slow, but it works. The glue becomes tacky, workable. It's crude. Desperate. But it's enough. I press the leather spines back into place, smoothing the grain with my thumb. I work by feel, my vision too blurred to see details. But my fingers know the texture of leather, the give of properly applied adhesive, the tension required to create a seamless bond. To a casual observer, they look like ordinary, well-loved volumes. Only a master binder would notice the slight swell in the spine. The faint asymmetry in the boards. Mark and Gable are many things. But they are not masters of anything. Mrs. Gable storms in at 7 a.m. I hear her before I see her, the heavy tread of orthopedic sneakers on hardwood, the jangle of keys, the stale smell of cheap cigarettes and stale coffee. Rise and shine, Grace, she barks, throwing open the curtains. Daylight floods the room, stabbing into my eyes like needles. I don't look at her. I let my head loll to the side, my mouth slightly open, a thin line of drool darkening the pillowcase. Jesus, she mutters. You really are gone, aren't you? She hauls me out of bed with rough, efficient hands. I am dead weight, a meat puppet for her to maneuver. My limbs hang loose, unresponsive. She grunts with the effort, her breath hot and sour against my face. She dresses me in my best wool suit. Navy blue, tailored, the one I wore to congressional hearings when I testified about archival preservation funding. She brushes my hair with unnecessary roughness, yanking the bristles through the tangles, not caring when I wince. Every time she sighs in annihilation, God, this woman, my confidence grows. She thinks the hardware has finally crashed. She doesn't realize I'm just running a silent diagnostic. The probate courtroom is a sterile box of fluorescent lights and mahogany veneer. Mark wheels me in. They've put me in a wheelchair, despite the fact that I can walk, his hand on my shoulder a heavy, hypocritical weight. I clutch the 3 books to my chest like a child with a teddy bear. The Shakespeare. The Bible. The Restoration Manual. No one questions it. To them, it's just the pathetic clinging of a woman losing her grip on reality. Sarah, the APS caseworker, is already seated at the petitioner's table. She gives the judge a pitying nod as we enter, a silent communication, she's worse than we thought. The judge, a man in his 60s, wire-rimmed glasses, a face that's seen 1,000 sad cases, looks at me with the kind, condescending expression reserved for children and the dying. I keep my eyes unfocused, watching the dust motes dance in the slanted morning light. The same dust motes from my bedroom. Following me here. Witnesses. The trap is set. But the roles have shifted. Mark's lawyer rises, a man in an expensive suit, graying at the temples, his voice practiced and somber. Your Honor, this is a tragic case of progressive cognitive decline. Mrs. Grace Wilson, age 68, formerly a distinguished archivist at the Library of Congress, has exhibited severe lapses in judgment over the past several months. He slides a folder across the bench. Exhibit A forged deed of gift, purporting to transfer a valuable Shakespeare facsimile to a public library. The signature is clearly the product of diminished capacity. I watch Mark from the corner of my eye. He's sitting at the petitioner's table, his hands folded, his expression a perfect mask of grief. He wipes a fake tear from his eye. But in the reflection of the judge's glasses, I see him check his watch. He's timing the transfer. Already counting the minutes until the $5 million hits his offshore account. He's already spending the money I spent a lifetime protecting. Mrs. Wilson. The judge's voice is kind. Gentle. It's the most dangerous thing in this room. Do you understand what your son is asking for? He wants to help you. To make sure you're safe. To manage your affairs so you don't have to worry about them anymore. I lean forward, letting my voice be a shaky, fragile thread. The records. I pause, letting my jaw tremble. They must be preserved. I have gifts. For the archive. For the record. I lift the 3 books slightly, as if offering them to the court. Mark lets out a condescending chuckle. Soft. Affectionate. It's okay, Mom, he says, his voice dripping with false tenderness. We'll put them in the car. You can keep them. The lawyer smiles indulgently. Your Honor, as you can see. Your Honor, I interrupt, my voice suddenly gaining a clarity that cuts through the room like a scalpel. The lawyer freezes mid-sentence. Mark's smile falters. Before you decide if I am expired, I continue, each word deliberate, precise, I would like to submit these 3 volumes into the official record as evidence of my current hobby. I stand up. Not using the armrests of the wheelchair. Not bracing myself on the table. I stand with the ramrod-straight spine of a woman who has spent 40 years guarding the nation's history. The silence in the room is absolute. A vacuum waiting to be filled. Mark's face has gone pale. Grace, he says, his voice tight, Sit down. I am addressing the court, I say, not looking at him. Unless I've already been declared incompetent, I believe I still have that right. The judge's expression has shifted. The pity is gone, replaced by sharp, judicial attention. Go ahead, Mrs. Wilson. I step forward, moving slowly but steadily, and place the 3 books on the evidence table. Context is everything, I say, my voice ringing clear. That's what we teach archivists. A document without context is just paper. But with context, with provenance, with chain of custody, with supporting evidence, it becomes truth. I press my thumbs into the specific soft spots of the Shakespeare binding. The hidden catches, meticulously weakened last night, give way. The spine flops open. The silver dictaphone falls onto the wooden evidence table with a heavy, metallic clack. Mark's face turns the color of curdled milk. Sarah's clipboard slips from her lap, clattering to the floor. The lawyer's mouth opens, but no sound comes out. I don't stop. I open the restoration manual next, tilting it so the judge can see the rows of amber vials nestled inside, each one labeled in my meticulous hand. Evidence, I say simply. Mark tries to stand. Your Honor, this is, she's confused, she doesn't. Sit down, Mr. Wilson, the judge says sharply. Mark sits. I pick up the dictaphone with steady hands and press play. The courtroom is suddenly filled with Mark's voice, amplified by the high-ceilinged acoustics. Gable, make sure she's properly leveled for the Friday hearing. The judge needs to see her unable to follow a simple sentence. If she looks too sharp, my petition for full guardianship will fail. A pause. Then Mrs. Gable's voice, dry and amused. Don't worry, sweetheart. By Friday, she won't know her own name. Mark's voice again. Good. The doctor's already signed off on the cognitive assessment. I just need the visual to match the paperwork. The judge's expression shifts from curiosity to cold, judicial fury. Mark lunges for the recorder. It's doctored, it's not. The bailiff moves faster, his hand dropping onto Mark's shoulder with the finality of a lock. Sit down. I let the recording play. All 4 minutes. Every word of the conspiracy, laid bare. When it's finished, the silence is deafening. These vials, I say, pointing to the evidence table, contain the Earl Grey tea served to me by Mrs. Gable over the past 4 days. I turn to face Mrs. Gable directly. She's visibly shaking now, her face the color of ash. The metallic tang is a signature of benzodiazepine sedatives. I request an immediate forensic toxicology screen of these samples, and of my own blood. I turn back to the judge. I also suggest the court look into the offshore entities mentioned at the 4-minute mark of the recording. Specifically, the Cayman accounts my son referenced when discussing the transfer of my trust assets. I look at Mark. He isn't a predator anymore. He's just a man who realized he brought a knife to a book fight. Your Honor, the lawyer stammers, rising on unsteady legs. My client, this is clearly a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. The judge's voice is ice. Counselor, I just heard a recording of your client conspiring to chemically incapacitate his own mother to defraud her of $5 million. Would you like to revise your characterization? The lawyer sits down. The judge turns to the bailiff. Take Mr. Wilson and Mrs. Gable into custody. I'm issuing an emergency protective order for Mrs. Wilson and referring this matter to the district attorney for criminal investigation. Mark and Mrs. Gable are led out in handcuffs. Mark doesn't look at me as he passes. His oily concern has been replaced by panicked silence. Mrs. Gable is crying, big, ugly sobs that echo off the courtroom walls. The judge dismisses the guardianship petition with prejudice and orders an immediate audit of the Wilson Family Trust. Within a week, the no contest clause is triggered. Mark is legally excised from my life like a tumor. 3 months later, I sit on the porch of a small cottage on the Maryland coast. I found it through a quiet real estate agent who didn't ask questions. It's far enough from the estate that no one knows my name. Close enough to the ocean that I can hear the waves at night. The air smells of salt and old paper. Not copper. I lift my teacup, Royal Doulton, the forget-me-nots bright in the afternoon sun, and take a sip. The Earl Grey is hot, clear, and I brewed it myself. No metallic tang. No chemical veil. Just bergamot and steam and the faint sweetness of honey I added because I wanted to, not because someone forced me. Sovereignty isn't a $5 million trust. It's the ability to remember your own name and the strength to protect it. I take another sip. It tastes like victory. If you made it to this moment, thank you for listening all the way through. Most people bail before the bill comes due. But here, the bill always comes due. What started as humiliation and disrespect ended with receipts, truth, and a payoff they never saw coming. If you want more stories where karma shows up without mercy, hit subscribe and come back for the next one. Now tell me in the comments, what was the most disgusting thing they did? What crossed the line for you?